So hello and welcome. Happy Friday. Today is Friday, April the 30th. Tomorrow's May Day. And today's question and answers for Backyard Beekeeping, episode number 108. I'm Frederick Dunn. I'm glad you're here. This is the way to be. And today we're going to be talking about, the questions that were posted over the past week through Facebook, social media, email, YouTube videos like this one down in the comment section below. It's also a podcast at Podbean, and it's called The Way to Be. There too. Look for links down in the video description. That will save you lots of time. The other thing is, what's the temperature outside right now? I know you're dying to know. It's 44 degrees Fahrenheit. What's that in Celsius? Oh, 7 degrees. We have gusty wind, lots of rain. Wind gusts are going to continue, so it's not fun for bees or beekeeping. And with all the rain and the heavy winds, that means things fall down for some reason. Yeah, the soil gets wet, trees topple. It also means we can't work our bees. And guess what happened on the one warm day that we had just before the rainstorms came in? A bunch of packaged bees were delivered to this area by the United Parcel Service. That was bad news for me. 2 out of 3, the packages that I got, because I wanted to put one in the Layens hive. Because I can't wait for swarms. We're having erratic weather. And you can't just do a split because the equipment does not carry over at Layens hive to Langstroth equipment. So the other thing is the Langstroth hive wanted to load that up too. Well, anyway, long story short, a lot of packages were delivered around here dead. I had a new method I was going to use to install the bees. Wanted to share that with you. I got started, but there's a lot of dead bees in the packages. And then we contact Mann Lake, because that's who we ordered them through. And a lot of the people that I speak with, some of you that watch, ordered your Saskatraz bees, Carniolans, and other lines through Mann Lake. And then they got delivered dead. So maybe it was the high heat. There's also a gel in there. High fructose corn syrup gel. It's like emerald green, and it's supposed to stay in the jar. It's different because I'd never seen a package like that. And the gel had fallen out in chunks and was in with the bees. And some of the bees, even though they can't fly, they can't move around, but they're alive. Their little feet are wiggling, and they're like all sticky. I can't tell if the gel had a big part in making it so the bees couldn't make it. The queens were alive in 2 packages. And a friend that got 2 packages same day, same delivery method, same packaging material and the same gel, 100% dead out. Not any of the bees were on the surface underhanging the cover of that package, and the queens are dead. So the next thing you do is within 24 hours, you have to report your dead bees. So you have to measure how many dead bees are on the bottom, across the bottom. So use a flashlight, shine it through the back side of your package. These are bee buses, these plastic bee buses for transporting the package of bees. And you want to get a good picture, and you want to put a ruler in front of it because it has to be at least 1.5 inches deep of dead bees in order for you to get your claim. So what people really want, though, is they want their bees. So when you contact a Mann Lake, me included, I take pictures. In fact, I'll put a picture up right now. There's one of my packages of dead bees right there, and you can see the green in it. You can see the gel in there. And you can also see up on the left side of the package that there's a cluster around the queen cage. So the queen cage still has a live queen, but there's a tiny cluster of bees. Now what are you going to do with a tiny group of bees like that? I can't get out and work them right now because we have to deal with cold temperatures and rain and everything else. And I can't just grab, see, I could install just a little cluster of the bees around the queen. I can take that into a hive, and I can pull some brood frames from another hive, and I can stick them in there first, then put the queen and everything in there. And see if we can get them to combine, see if we can salvage that. There's Saskatraz. Fred, I thought you weren't going to work with Saskatraz anymore. Well, everybody asked me to give it another try, so I'm going to. So I did get Saskatraz bees again. What is one of the things that I wonder about personally when these packages come? You have varroa mites on them. A lot of people don't feel good about washing and mite counting a package of bees that just came in, but hey, they died. So now we have dead out packages. Now you can take the whole thing, put them in a screen colander, Wash them really good with Dawn free dish soap, whatever it's called, and run that underneath your screen colander with all the dead bees in it. Put your second colander and put one of those large paper coffee filters in there. I have stacks of them. And you wash them through there really good, and you see what washes out onto the coffee filter and see, did they arrive with Varroa destructor mites? It's a great opportunity because they're dead anyway. So now you can evaluate them. So I hope you did not have that. Some people had good success. Their packages came through great shape and everything else. I got 1 out of 3. So, well, I'm glad I got the 3. If I'd ordered just 1, I'd be out of bees. Like some of the other people, that was all the bees that we're going to have this year. Now they're out of bees. They'll only refund your money. They will not ship replacement bees because the message I got from Mann Lake was that they're going to refund the money rather than risk other bees dying. So if you had an interesting package that came this year, and write down in the comment section below what you think happened to them. Why didn't they make it? Did your UPS driver tilt them up on end or on their sides, even though there's a big sticker on the side that says this side up? It's possible because sometimes they're not taking the time to read those stickers. They're just making maximum use of space in their trucks. Super hot days. Heat, by the way, is worse than cooler temperatures when it comes to transporting packages, when it comes to the queen potentially getting too hot and having an impact negatively on her fertility. So that's it on that. The other thing is I need to mention, this card was sent to me with a recent shipment of bee supplies, and it's about Hives for Heroes. It's a veteran support program. Hives for Heroes. And I'll put the link down below here. Hives for Heroes, HIVESFORHEROES.com. So if you go there, you can support veterans that are returning from war, veterans that are transitioning to civilian life, veterans that are having problems with PTSD and other stressors. And so this is a way for you to contribute either resources, a beehive, bees. There's also, if you've got a veteran in your family or a friend that has passed away, you can memorialize their passing by sponsoring a beehive, a memorial beehive that then goes into a veteran-managed apiary. So it's a national program. It is nonprofit. I'll put the link down in the video description. I hope you'll check that out. So Hives for Heroes, that's another great thing. And that's it. Let's get into our questions today. Here's the very first thing, and I stapled a bunch of them together because a lot of people said the same thing. What kind of bees do I keep here? I keep bee weaver bees when I buy them in. Although I am trying to do that, I'm giving the Saskatraz bees another try. I had them in 2019 through 2020. Now we're in 2021. We'll see if things have changed. But what happened was a lot of people are trying to get the bee weaver queen bees, which are survivor stock that are untreated. So they've been treatment free for many, many years. And that's the stock that I have really good luck with here. And they do live up to their reputation. They do chew the feet on the Varroa mites. They do groom themselves well. And they almost never need treatment. And I'm not doing that blind. We count the mites to see if hives need treatment. And last year, my hives that had the most Varroa destructor mite counts on them were the Saskatraz bees. So, but now people are going to the Bee Weaver site, and Bee Weaver is different from R Weaver, and they're coming out of Texas. And they're looking for the Bee Weaver queens, that survivor stock, and guess what? They're not even listed. So I wrote to them, and I said, what's going on with the Bee Weaver bees? Because people are writing me saying they're trying to get the bees that I use, because when I need to bring in fresh stock, queen of known genetics, I go with the Bee Weaver queens. They fly that in. If they sold packages, I would buy their packages, but they don't. Well, they do. You have to go there and pick them up, which is too far for me. So, but here's the message I got from Bee Weaver. So get ready, because I'm going to say something here that's time sensitive. We're sold out of Bee Weaver for weeks. We will add them back in as soon as we can. We won't have these Italian Carniolan hybrids for much longer. So for those of you who are going to them for the secondary stock, the Italian Carniolan hybrid bees, you better stop watching right now and go and put your order in for those if you're trying to get them. But they're helping for folks who need something immediately. Low drone numbers after the freeze. Remember, Texas has had terrible, weird weather this year, and they got snow and freezing, which obviously impacted breeding yards and things like that. So low drone numbers after the freeze, and we had here, so population is right at average. We're on time shipping, but don't have our usual surplus we like to offer. So the other thing is there's no apparent list. Like you can't write them and say, put me on your waiting list so that when those bee weaver queens are ready, you can send them out to me right away. So you just have to keep checking the website until they send out what they need. They do have a Facebook page, so you might be able to watch that and see what's going on. But I'm very happy that they took the time to reply to me and tell me that that's what's going on. And I also told them as soon as they are available, I want some. So, because I want to use them when I make splits and stuff to save time, because to be honest, I don't know what this year is going to be like. We have beekeepers in my area, some that did really well. Some had the worst winter ever since they've been keeping bees. And I don't mean small scale. I'm talking about hundreds of hive losses. So I'm just glad to be in the game. I'm just glad to have enough hives to work with. And so I can do splits, and people have been asking if I will sell some of my bees. I really would rather not, because there's things I want to do with them. And based on the weather this year so far, they're not doing the hives that were really, really strong, that were looking like I was going to need to split them. I would have been splitting them this week, but the weather turned. So this weekend, I'm going to be assessing and looking at those. And of course, making YouTube videos to show you what they look like on the inside. I'm going to show you what's going on with the long Langstroth. So I'm back in business with the long Langstroth hive. I got bees in it. And the Layens hive is touch and go, so I need to put bees in there and get creative about how to install them there. So here we go. First question is from Rick A. I live near Pittsburgh. I am scheduled to receive 2 packages of bees in May. They're from Georgia. Is it okay to treat them with oxalic acid sublimation a few days after putting these in the hive? I thought I could treat the new hive prior to any capped brood. Thanks. Okay, and this question, not just one person sent that exact same question. Some people think this is all repetition, but I think it's worth repeating because it's important information. So, first thing I want to say, there's an article in the American Bee Journal that came out because people are misinterpreting and misunderstanding what the current regulations are with oxalic acid vaporization. Now, I know this is a package, so we're not taking honey off of it, so we don't have honey supers, so we don't have those restrictions, and I'll get back to that. But I want to take an opportunity right now to talk about it. This is apabioxol, and I want you to look at that carefully. If what you're going to use for oxalic acid vaporization, it's a miticide to kill the Varroa destructor mites. Sublimation, which is the vaporization method, is the most popular because it's convenient, it's quick, it's inexpensive. The article addressed the fact that beekeepers are just willy-nilly using oxalic acid, and then they chicken slammed YouTube beekeepers that are not doing enough to explain what the restrictions currently are. It's approved. The thing is, now that it's approved, have the labels caught up? Has the apabioxol, which is oxalic acid dihydrate, has it caught up? No, they haven't been, the label has not changed yet. So you still should be following the procedures, get the approved oxalic acid, not the stuff from the hardware store shelf. I have to say that to you. I have to be responsible. Steer in the right direction. This is 175 grams of it. If you're a backyard beekeeper, this is going to last you a long time. This particular one came from Better Bee, so they sell it. Get the stuff that is actually labeled for the bees, and don't just go nuts with it thinking that it's okay to use it a million times over. Now back to my question. And I will, in fact, I'm going to link that article for those who want to read more. You know, I think it's important. Read more, follow up, go beyond what we talk about today. So you can now, would I say, those of you who've been watching me for a long time, if you get a package of bees and you install them, would you just go ahead and treat them? If there's Varroa destructor mites, they're phoretic, which means they're exposed, which means we could get like a 99% kill rate on those things. So shouldn't we just treat them? Well, here's what I'm going to say. When you get that pack, ooh, I got one back here. This is one of those bee buses, but I'm going to use it as an example today because I have some ideas. I'm playing around with the bees that made it this year. So the packages that came, I decided I was watching another video from somebody else, and there was a woman and she was very heavily protected. Big old leather gloves and everything else. She was showing a bee funnel for loading packages on the front of the beehive. So then I started looking for the package loading bee funnel, and I also came across a video by David at Barnyard Bees, and he put that funnel on there and he strapped it, and then he took so on the outside of the hive, and then he took the package and it goes right upside down. Watch, I have no dead bees. It goes right upside down on the funnel on the front of the hive, so then these things follow the funnel and then they're supposed to go in. Look at that little dead bee in there. So anyway, that got me thinking. I didn't really like the look of the funnel, which looks like it's made out of the same stuff, the core flute that's used on screen bottom boards and stuff like that. But it did get me thinking, when you get a package of bees, and there's always some dead bees in them. So hopefully not a lot, but there's some. There's a couple of hundred dead bees on the bottom, probably on a 3-pound package. So what we generally do is you pull a bunch of frames out and you shake the bees out. And of course you've taken your queen cage out, which is weird when it comes in the bee bus too, because the queen cage is just the queen. She has no attendants. Oh look, here's one. And this one had been in the bee bus for a little while, so they already built some comb on it, but it does not have, usually there's a cork at one end that you can pull out right away, and then a candy plug at the other. On this one, it is the queen by herself, which gets fed by the attending bees in transit. And then there's a cork in the end, but there's no candy plug. So if you're not doing a direct release, and if you're a new beekeeper, I highly recommend you do not do a direct release. So you would pull that cork out and you get one of those little marshmallows that you put in your hot chocolate, and you stick that in the hole, and that's what they chew out. So then this goes in. But let me tell you my thoughts. And I'm going to, at the very end of today's video, no, I'm not going to do it on the end of today's video. I'm going to do a standalone video showing how I'm playing with installing these. Because I have the Layens hive. The Layens hive, the frames, you pull some frames, you dump some bees in there. All the frames come together and form like a cover board. So it's kind of impractical. But what I don't want to do is dump a bunch of dead bees into a colony that then the bees that you just installed have to haul the dead bees out. So here's the opening. Now when you take the queen cage out, it's gonna be covered in bees. So keep those bees on the queen cage, put those inside the hive, secure it, and I don't push it between frames. Because again, this is where the Layens hive annoys me. Now I know if you love Layens hives, you don't want to hear me say anything bad about it. But let me just tell you something. Layens hive fan enthusiasts. With the Layens hive, the top of this frame, when you push them all together, there's no opening. Why? Because there's nothing above it either. In other words, when you lift the lid, it's just open above there. So normally you might split a couple of frames apart, put this thing in between the queen cage, in between two frames, but then there's this gap here, right? And in the Layens hive, now they can get up into your cover, into the roof. There's nothing in between. There's no inner cover. The inner cover is composed by the frames themselves. You're in a pickle, I know. So learning curve. Anyway, so then what you do is you take an empty frame. So what we call foundationless. There's no foundation in it of any kind. Then you take this little aluminum wire that comes with this thing and you give it a little 90-degree twist. See that? And then you take this screen side out and you put it right underneath the cover bar, and then you put the frame on this way. So then this is how your queen cell, your queen cage is going to sit in there, and then the cork or your piece of marshmallow is in the bottom, because we don't have to worry about dead attendant bees plugging her exit. See? So now you've got this queen cage in there. Now where should this queen cage be? If the entrance of your hive is over here and you're putting in package bees, right like that, it sits right here because we want the queen and her pheromone to be near that entrance. And then of course they'll start filling in the frame, but your frames with foundation and so forth on either side. This is what I'm doing this year, and I had to do it because I needed to be able to put all these together and have the queen cage there. Layens hive, learning curve. So anyway, then I've got those bees on the inside, right? So now this one, again, the Layens hive has no landing board. If we take it the way it came from Dr. Leo Sherishkin, horizontalhives.com. Anyway, so you got the hole. I pushed this right up against it, and then I took angle iron and I stuck it in the ground and then leaned it because the corners of the angle iron go right against this and pushed it up against there. And it doesn't close it completely up because we have these little standoff buttons here. So that goes up there. So now I can get my video camera lined up and I can look through here and see if they're crossing into the hive. And guess what happened? Yeah, the bees in this package actually cross-decked, went out of here. You can see them go through the open space up into that. And the first few ones that went in there and found the queen came back out, lifted their little hind ends right here. Nasonov gland was open and they're fanning in this direction. And I didn't even have to shake these bees out. They all migrated out of this thing on their own right into the hive. No shaking, no fuss, no muss, no core flute funnel, although that did get me thinking along these lines. So now I just have this in here, ventilation all around, they go in there, the feed can is out. Now what's left in here? Dead bees. Dead bees that don't have to be removed now by the new residents of your new beehive. So you do with these, throw them in the garbage? No. These are the bees we're going to wash, and we're going to see, we're going to wash this whole thing out and right into a colander that's lined with the paper coffee filters. And then we're going to see what's on there. Little bee feet and stuff, if that's all, great. But now we get to see, do they have mites with them? You're going to know. So then, let's say they did have mites. Now we go back to Rick's question. Can I treat them? Yeah, they showed up with mites. This is your chance to knock the mites right on their little mite arachnid heinies. So, they are arachnids, by the way. So if you hate spiders, it'll make you feel better about taking them out. So then, when do you treat? Because we just installed the new queen, it's kind of tenuous. They're setting up house. We want them to stay. We don't want there to be any troubles. So that queen's going to be out of her cage as soon as they eat through the marshmallow, or you're going to release her on the third day, and you're going to pull that queen cage out. And then I'm going to suggest she's not laying eggs right away because she's been in her cage. So let's say the minute she gets out of that cage, she lays eggs. 9 days from then, they'll start capping pupa. But it's going to take more than that. I'm just telling you. It just will. It's going to take more than 9 days before you see any capped brood in a brand new colony and with a package installed like that. So this is what I recommend. The 9th day. Get in there, and that's when I'm going to tell Rick, if he's watching right now, that's when you get them with your oxalic acid vaporization. Which oxalate will you use? The approved, properly labeled oxalic acid. How much will you use? The approved dose according to the label. All the information is here. Then you're getting all the mites. How many times will you have to treat? 1. How will you know that the treatment was effective? You don't, because you can't see the mites fall off. But a week after that, then they're established again, and now we do have capped brood. Now we know who the nurse bees are. You know, these, by the way, are bees that reverted back to performing nurse duties, and they were stimulated by the pheromones that are released when those little eggs hatch out and the little larvae start releasing the feed me pheromone. And then the worker bees that are in the package, if they weren't nurse bees at the time, get stimulated then to provide the resources to feed and care for brood once again. So they can revert back to duties they've had in the past. So then you can do a mite count, see what's going on. Now if you put them in a beehive, because now I'm talking about the Layens hive, because you don't have access to the bottom of that thing. It's all enclosed, it's all inside. There's no screens, there's no openings in the bottom at all. There's entrances, 3 entrances along one side. But in a standard laying, you might have a screen bottom board. If you've got a flow hive, the flow hive 2s all have removable trays, so those should be cleaned completely when you install them. After you've done that oxalic acid treatment, your tray's in there and you have an opportunity to see if mites fell off and died. See if you got them. So that's what I recommend. 9th day, treat them, treat the package. After you verify that they need it. I mean, I know, real world, some people are not going to count the mites. They've got a new package. They're just going to go ahead and treat. I have to tell you to do that when you know for sure that there are mites. Inspect your dead bees. Inspect your dead out packages. If you got 3 packages and one of them's dead out of the 3 and that one dead one that you checked had mites all over it, I wouldn't count the other 2. I'd go ahead and consider them worthy of treatment. I would just guess that they're mite loaded at that point. This comes from David Thomas, Latrobe, PA. I hope I said that right. I'm a 3rd-year beekeeper. My Saskatraz bees made it over the winter and are alive and flying. Not as many bees are flying as my other 3 hives, but they're bringing in pollen. I did a full hive inspection yesterday and found the queen with 1 frame of good brood pattern and spotty brood on 3 other frames. I'm thinking for whatever reason the queen started laying late this spring. I saw no eggs. I have a very difficult time seeing eggs, so it doesn't mean the eggs weren't there. Just didn't see them. But saw plenty of larvae, pupae, and capped brood. My concern is that I saw no drones, no drone brood anywhere throughout the inspection. Should I be alarmed that there are no visible drones in my hive at this time? There are drones, drone brood, in my other 3 hives. Other question, will bees still bring in pollen if the hive is queenless? Thanks for all you do. Okay, so here's the thing. Not having drones in the hive is not a problem. In fact, if you had lost the queen and they were truly queenless, the only thing they would be producing in there, if they had still new larvae and capped brood, would be drones, because then you would see that there's a laying worker in the absence of a queen, which can happen 3 weeks past the loss of the queen. But you see larvae and everything else in worker cells. So I say they're good to go. I think you're just not seeing it. Now, when do bees produce drones? So if you've got tiny colonies, and I've got a couple that came through winter, not super strong, but they came through winter, so I'm super excited, and I go out there every day and I count the pollen going in to see how fast and how rapid it is. And if it's more than 10 in a minute, they're good to go, and I look for these increases. When is the pollen activity the highest? Between 2 and 3 in the afternoon on a nice warm day when the sun is shining, and they're still hitting apple trees and everything else. But a small colony that's not producing drones is not a problem, because only the colonies that are big and strong and have good resources and have surplus food inside the hive, those are the ones that are going to start producing drone brood. So if they have drones and full frames of brood and everything else, that's an awesome colony. But if you have brood and other resources, if you see they're storing nectar and they've got their pollen stores going up and the brood frames are looking good, even though you had a couple of spotty ones out here, the weather definitely plays. And if the number of bees in that hive are smaller, they're not going to produce drones until they become very robust and feel like things are going really well for them. So do they still bring in pollen if the hive is queenless? The answer to that question is sure. Why? Because what are they feeding the pollen to? What is pollen used for? Pollen is the protein that comes from plants that they get from the anthers of the flowers. And they're going to bring it in there, and they have to feed any kind of larvae that they've got developing in there. So if they're queenless, what did we just mention that could happen anytime past 3 weeks if the queen has been gone? You could have a laying worker. So workers have ovaries all the time anyway. They're female workers. They don't have as many ovaries as the queen. They're not as cool. They don't perform as well sexually as the queen. They have constrained their own reproductive functioning in the presence of the queen's mandibular pheromone, also known as QMP. So when you see beekeepers say, QMP, imitation QMP, fake, synthetic QMP, it's queen mandibular pheromone, which is part of her sex pheromone, which also lets them know that the queen is present, that she's laying. So it communicates this information as to the status of the queen. So is she fertile and in lay? That's a type of pheromone that she releases that calms the whole hive and keeps them cohesive. Now, in her absence, they notice the absence right away, but see, they can't turn their ovaries on right away. So these worker bees, it takes a while. That's why I say you got about 3 weeks before, number one, they notice the queen's absence. Number two, they start to make changes in their own hormone levels in these worker bees. And then their ovaries start to become active, and then they can start producing what's considered infertile eggs. So the only thing that they can produce are drone eggs. And that's why the absence of drones in this colony, good idea. But while the workers start laying their eggs, those larvae need to be fed bee bread, and that comes from pollen, which means they would be bringing in pollen to feed the drones, the rate at which they're bringing in the pollen. That's why we make that key distinction. Are they bringing in more than 10 loads of pollen per minute? Then that indicates they've got a big brood pattern going, and probably the queen is fertile in laying. If they're sporadic, just a few little bits and smidgens of pollen going on, that's when they could be feeding drone brood, because it all has to be fed. See? So that should answer that question. Next one is from Roachless. I've seen you talk about how queen excluders slow down production because the workers have to squeeze through those gaps. Would there be any negative outcomes if I drilled a new top entrance in the lid of my flow hive near the logo, for example, to allow the bees to come in and out of those frames through the hole in the inner cover? I would keep the drilled piece and fill the hole again and block access to the roof too if it starts getting colder. I know they may build comb. Okay. I did this, and some people got mad at me for messing up their flow hive anyway. But what I did is, I drilled a hole up here, right there off to the side, off center, and then I put one of the big circle gates on there so I could change it to vented, queen excluder, open, or closed. If you notice, when you look at the flow hives that I have, and I have a bunch of them out in the apiary, I don't do those holes in the top anymore. And that's because in order to do that, the inner cover on the flow hive, that's where your feeder would be. And I leave the feeder on there, or I leave it plugged all the time. There isn't space above the inner cover on a flow hive to have a rapid round feeder, for example. So you just put a little tiny jar feeder on there, inverted sugar syrup. And I've never really had to do it, so I don't put those holes in there. The other thing is, the reason we have an inner cover on a beehive is because we want to keep the bees down below, and that inner cover is what they're going to glue up around the inner surfaces. And then we pull this flow hive cover off, which really settles over the inner cover and has a little overlap down there, as all telescoping covers do. What happens when we give the bees full access to that cavity up there? It's about bee space. Any space larger than 3/8 of an inch, the bees will fill that with comb. We call that burr comb. Smaller than 3/8 of an inch, they seal with propolis, potentially seal it with propolis. So what happens is you get yourself a flow hive cover, and Cedar Anderson even said, let them do that if you want to get some chunk honey, some comb honey. And they'll make wild comb in there, and you can cut it out and everything else. But good luck pulling that cover off. It's going to pull the inner cover with it. Huge pain, because now that overlap keeps you from getting your hive tool in underneath the inner cover so you can pry it up. So now we've got this whole top that's glued together. So I highly recommend not providing an exit through the outer cover. The telescoping cover of the flow hive, that gabled end. First of all, other flow enthusiasts are going to hate on you because they criticized me really bad for that. Why would you do it? And they were right. It was wrong. It didn't work well. There was no reason to vent through there. And of course, if you put screen over that inner entrance and just use it for venting through the top, because that's the other thing. I said, well, then I can use it for venting. But we know in hindsight that they glued that all up with propolis. So they took the screen and sealed it up completely. So once again, a bunch of extra work, and ruined the great appearance of it by putting a hole in it that was unnecessary. So what if you want to give an upper entrance? So what if you want to use the queen excluder? For those of you who don't know, This is a queen excluder. This is not the ones that come with the flow hive. The flow hive, they're generally black plastic queen excluders. But here's a queen excluder just so visual effects, you know what we're talking about. The metal ones. And if you want to guarantee that you are not going to get eggs up in your honey super or in your flow super, you have to put a queen excluder in if you want an absolute guarantee. So then you put an upper entrance, but just don't drill the hole. So you put a shim. There's usually a 2-inch shim. Some companies sell them. Man Lake sells them. I'm sure, you know, Better Bee, Dedant, all these companies sell them. They're just little shims, and you'll see usually a little red plug in it, which is the upper entrance hole. So I recommend you put that shim on top of your upper box, which would be your flow super in this case, or your honey super if you're doing another configuration. Then you pull that little hole out, you unplug it. That's your upper entrance to foraging bees that are out there getting the nectar and stuff. Get a speed line right into the place where the nectar is being stored, and above that is your inner cover, and then overlaying that is your outer cover, your telescoping cover, and it does not get glued down and create a huge mess for you. So I recommend either you make one or you get one. Now what about, now we created that space up there, now we got that entrance, is there a chance that they'll run burr comb up in that? Well, of course they will, and they're going to attach it to the bottom of the inner cover. Much easier to deal with that though than to have your outer telescoping cover glued down. So I hope that helps. So that's a negative outcome. And it will speed up your honey production, having that upper entrance, even though I didn't do that at all last year and I got lots of honey still without it, but then I'm not using queen excluders. So, Steve Kleinman, just an installation of 2 packages here in Massachusetts. And an interesting question came into my head. Worker bees graduate through several roles in their short lifetime. Also, I believe I read that a bee's lifespan may have less to do with chronological age and more to do with flight time. Their wings and wing muscles wear out. So my question is twofold. First, is the role of a queen's attendant a lifetime role, or do those attendants eventually graduate to forager? So, well, that's the queen's retinue. It's often referred to as the bees, the nurse bees, very young, very fresh. They've never been out of the hive. They've never been exposed to the toxins of the wider world. Therefore, they're very good attendants for the queen because they feed her. They carry away the queen's waste. That's another question that I got recently too, is when does the queen do her cleansing flights? I think I saw her doing a cleansing flight on the landing board. They don't do cleansing flights. So the only time the queen honeybee leaves is during her virgin flights when she's mating and coming back. And then the next time would be when she ultimately swarms, or if the colony absconds and they all leave. So that's it. She makes no routine flights in and out of the colony ever. So she's attended by young nurse bees. And those, they feed her, groom her constantly, constant grooming. And they also spread her pheromone. What's the pheromone? What's it called? QMP. Queen Mandibular Pheromone. So they're licking her and they're metabolizing that, and through their own mandibular glands, they're also spreading her pheromone all over the place, and they're metabolizing it. And it's also the queen's pheromone that they're spreading when it gets into their system and they lift their rear end, and you see that little white patch open up, which is called the Nasonov gland, because somebody named Nasonov, a Russian fellow, an anatomist, came up with that observation of what its function was. And then they fan their wings and spread that into the air to let them know that the queen is in residence here. So, do they graduate from that? Is that forever? Is it like, yeah, so no, it's not. It's not forever. They go through the normal progression. They get replaced, new ones hatch out, and they are in constant intimate contact with the queen, and therefore they're the youngest, cleanest, purest worker bees inside the hive. But they're also going to go on and they're going to be wax workers and foragers. Not every job inside the hive gets done by every bee. I know. Some of them skip right over. Not only that, depending on what's going on in the colony, what's going on in the hive seasonally, temperature-wise, and everything else, their jobs can change. They can spend very little or no time in one job and skip right to being a guard bee, for example. So they might not spend a lot of time working up wax and being a wax laborer. Instead, they might decide, wow, that bee is really has a chip on its shoulder and just wants to bite everybody and probably could deliver a sting. Good guard bee, get out there and go do that because you're no good at wax working. You don't get along with others. So then there's other jobs in there that they don't all do. There's undertaker bees. So these are little bees that still an in-hive job, but they find dead things. They like finding dead things and little bits and pieces, and they police up the interior of the hive and they're dragging out little dead bees. And do you know that some people have spent the time to actually observe and identify and mark those bees that were actually doing undertaker duties? Some bees never do that, while others prefer to do it. And not only that, when they should have been landing board guards and going out to be foragers, some of them were arrested in that position. And not only did they haul dead bees out better than other bees did, but they set records at it. Like they were game on, out to find a dead bee or bee parts. They could drag them out and get rid of them. And that's some very interesting stuff. Once again, things that people in academic environments are able to do and sit and study and watch and observe for hours and hours and hours and get the data that gives us information like that. So yeah, they graduate. So that's it. And yeah, seasonally, the life expectancy of the bee, the more work they're doing, the shorter their lifespan. The other thing is, and we'll tie this in, nutritionally, if they're nutritionally deficient, if they have some of the diseases that are introduced by the presence of the Varroa destructor mite who feeds on their fats and infuses those detrimental materials into their bodies, it shortens their lifespan. If they are in their pupa stage and they're not nourished properly. So when we're looking at our beehives, and this is a lot of fun this time of year when you finally do get in there and like the people that didn't see the eggs very well and things like that, take the time to learn to see those things. But when you're seeing the open larvae, so after the third day, after the little eggs have hatched, look and see how much food is around them. Some of them will be literally swimming in this little creamy white food resource that they're eating. They all start off on royal jelly. So, and then the diet changes as they progress through their open larvae state. So anyway, if you see a lot of that in there, then there's a lot of resources. They're super healthy, and those are going to be big, heavy, stout, full-bodied worker bees, and they're going to do great things. But on the other hand, if they're being raised in a period of drought, in a period where there's not a lot of resources coming in, and the hive maybe doesn't have the manpower to give them the nourishment that they need, and you see that there's just a little resource there, those bees will be undersized. They won't be so strong. They potentially are already infected with some of those pathogens that are already scooting around inside the hive. Those bees will not spend as much time on those interior jobs that they otherwise would if they were super healthy with this full life ahead of them. Knowing that their lives are short, they're going to get out and they're going to forage quicker or become water bees quicker and things like that, and then they're going to die. So it's much more complicated in the onset than you might think. Last question. This is a short one today. So we're going to get on to the nonsense talking here pretty soon. This comes from Alan, and I can't pronounce your last name. I'll just say Alan W. While watching your video, I saw in the background you have a spirulina bag on the shelf. Okay. I tried using it this spring and the bees really didn't seem to want it. I mixed it with sugar water. Have you tried it? And if so, what application and did they consume it? Looking forward to your input. First of all, and look, I just happen to have another bag right over here. This is what we're talking about. Now, what even got me doing this, by the way? This is, I'm going to give you a really good look at the label. This is dry powdered spirulina. That's very critical. The other thing is, this is fresh, this is organic, this is for human consumption. So I figured, well, if it's safe for humans, also make sure to look at the back, and they have the expiration date on there. Make sure that you're getting stuff that's going to last a nice long time, because let me tell you what size pack? This is a 1 pound pack. This will last forever. I made a mistake. I bought like 3 of them. But But how do I use it? And did the bees go for it? And why on earth would you even bother using it? I mean, it's kind of silly. You're going to put spirulina in here. Well, one thing I'm going to do too is I'm going to link the article down in the video description. So you can read more about the studies that were done, what the benefits were due. And it leads right into a previous question too, the longevity of the bee. Bees that were fed diets that included spirulina. And when I say fed, we're talking sugar syrup. There are spirulina patties also. So the results of the patty were not what was included in the study. So for me, I do have the spirulina patties. I have no way to quantify how much improvement there was by the bees because they consumed it or didn't. So that's kind of, this is a problem with backyard beekeeping. We don't have the numbers. We don't have the percentages to get out there. So what I have is direct observation. So if I put this out there, some people would think, well, you mix up your 1-to-1 sugar syrup because that's what we're using this time of year. 4 pounds of sugar, half a gallon of water, mix it up, and now we've got the syrup that we're going to go out there in dearth periods or for these new packages that just came. And you're putting it on for them to feed to keep their carbohydrates going. So what I found was my own level of it. What do the bees take? If you do too much of it, by the way, you smell this stuff way off. Pretty interesting. It has a consistency of talcum powder, so it goes on everything. So when I've been out playing with this, mixing it up or whatever, I have a light green dusting all over my clothes. So what I do is I put the 4 pounds of sugar in a big mixing bowl. Then I put, now it's 4 pounds of sugar. This is just what I do. This formula is not super scientific. I don't think it has to be terribly exact. But again, read the study. You tell me what you think. But I put a tablespoon of this stuff, a full tablespoon to 4 pounds of dry sugar, and I put it in the dry sugar. No water yet. I mix all that up together, and it turns all of your white processed dry sugar, it turns it this kind of dark, almost army green color. So it's pretty interesting. So a little goes a long way. So then after I mix all that together and get it really good and consistent, that's when I add the warm water, and that's when I mix it up for the final spirulina sugar syrup. And what I did was I put it out on my feeder station, and guess what went to it more than anything? So if you look at my slow motion wasp and slow motion hornet sequences, you know what they were all there drinking? Spirulina. So then the honeybees also went after it, but not at the same level. And that could have been because it's like, zebras going to drink at a watering hole that's got a bunch of lions and hyenas at it. So once it was clear, and if I had a way to block the hornets and stuff, the honeybees came to it. But then once the honeybees, as honeybees often do, once they sampled it, and once they flew back to a hive, and once that colony inside that hive approved of. See, this is the process. A forager goes out, it finds a carbohydrate resource, it's sugar. The higher the sugar content, the more valuable it is. The most valuable would be honey, and that's why they rob other honeybees. But when they find the sugar content, they zip back, and then they do something called trophallaxis. So the little bee lands there, gets past the guards, gets inside, out comes the tongue. What do you got? I don't know, taste it. Tastes pretty good. It tastes okay. Get away with that. So get buzzed away. No waggle dancing, no bragging, no nothing. Coming in, stick their tongue out, start tasting. Ooh, they like that. Approval. They like what you brought in. Okay, go brag about that. Go to the waggle dance floor, do your little turns, waggle this way, do a counter turn, waggle that way. Communicate where that is. Everybody else sometimes, and you'll see this too. This is pretty cool. When they're on the dance floor and they're doing the waggle dance, not only are the bees following to see what the waggle dance is, what they're communicating, because remember, the waggle dance is designed to be performed in complete darkness. So their antennae are out, they're touching, so there's a lot of tactile activity going on here. Sometimes they pause, and a little tongue will come out. Give me a sample of that. And if they don't like what they just tasted, other than the storekeeper bees that are the ones that are offloading that and putting it in storage, for example, I don't know if they're storing the spirulina sugar syrup that's 1-to-1 being offered. Do you know why? Because I don't see any honey cells with spirulina darkening them to that green color. So maybe I just don't understand how they're going to transition that. But the bees that get a taste take a very keen interest in where that bee got that. And then, of course, just like any other source, 10 bees come back, then 50 bees come back, then 100 bees come back. On the other hand, if there are other resources out in the environment that they prefer, higher sugar content, better taste, no spirulina, then they'll ignore your feeder. I don't recommend that you put it inside the beehive, because then what are we doing? We're kind of force feeding. So I recommend you putting it out at your feeding station. I don't have a really good method because I would need multiple feeders inside the beehive. I suppose you could do that, and then have one straight sugar syrup and one with the spirulina, and then we find out what attracts the bees the most. But I'm already going to suspect that they will be more drawn to the sugar syrup without spirulina than that has it, because that's what they do at the feeder station. So if I want them to take their medicine and take the spirulina, it has to be the only source of sugar syrup that I'm putting out at the feeding station. So the science is good, though, and they were metabolizing it because it was in their gut. It affects their microbiome, so it's in the midgut, and it's being held there, and it's being used as a resource. So because we have the honey crop that doesn't have any digestion going on, and then there's a little valve between that and their midgut that prevents those, whether they've got honey in there, whether they've got nectar resources, or whether they're a water bee, there's a valve that prevents it. It's the preventriculus that prevents it from going into that middle stomach where digestion can take place. So we know that they metabolize it. The question is, when did they metabolize it? In other words, did the foraging bee find it and consume it themselves and not unload it inside the hive? So in other words, did they feed it to each other directly through what? Trophallaxis. Or did they just consume it and transfer it directly into their gut so that they could use it in their microbiome? So it's more to know. And of course they find out scientifically because they dissect the bees and they look at the contents of their digestive system. So that's it for the questions for today, and I will put a link to that, but it's pretty easy to find. That label is very distinctive. I got it from Amazon. So let's see. So here's the fluff part. Yeah, I ordered. Some people are using my FlowHive discount codes. Thank you for doing that. They're on my website. What is the website? The website is thewaytobee.org, and there's a page discount codes. But anyway, I got the letter myself. I ordered FlowHive equipment 2 months ago, and I just got an email yesterday that said, because I get the red cedar versions. Why do I do that? Well, they look better because they're cool. But the other thing is they don't need finishing. So if you don't need to put a finish on it, although I'm trying out that Eco Wood now, that stuff is good. That looks cool. It's going to make everything dark and weathered looking, but I digress. So anyway, there's a wood shortage. The wood shortage, even though these things are made in Australia, where are they getting their cedar? United States, West Coast. So there's a wood shortage everywhere. I don't know about you, but if you're building something here in the United States this year, the cost of lumber tripled. So people that have these projects, building homes, repairs and things like that, the cost estimates are astronomical. So there's a wood shortage, and it has affected FlowHive. So it'll still come, but they said they're not going to come until August. Well, that doesn't do me any good. That's great for them because that's going into summer for them, But here, August, September, October, we're winding down. That's the final nectar flow, and then we're going into winter. So the other thing is, those of you who have just installed your packages, another question I get all the time is, how often, how much should I be feeding them sugar syrup? We just installed their package. How long should we do it? Until they stop using it. It's a brand new package. You get nothing to lose. If every time you go out there, some people put these 3-pound packages in there, put a half-gallon syrup on there. They've got their rapid round feeder. That thing is empty the next day. You better keep that feed on, because what are they doing? They're building wax with it. That is the best formula for them to be building wax. We have all these winds, these cold weather right now, 40s. That's terrible. They can't forage. They need that sugar syrup for them to build that pristine white honeycomb that they're going to be using to get that queen going in 5th gear. So keep the syrup on until they no longer use it. Hey Fred, aren't you feeding sugar syrup to all your hives in, and doesn't that come out in the honey? No, I don't feed sugar syrup to my established hives that made it through winter that are looking strong. It's only the weak and the feeble and the startups that get it. Everybody else does not. In fact, I like the fact that they're actually being slowed down right now because it's giving me more time to make preparations for those valuable splits that I have to document with video. So that's coming up. The other thing is, and I like this story, those of you who've been following this HiveGate, this is the HiveGate, of course, and there's a page for it on my website. Check it out if you don't know anything about it. Not one person has written anything negative about it. In our HiveGate Fellowship, I'm getting emails about it. People are commenting on the Fred's Fine Fowl Facebook page, but the fellowship you're looking for is the HiveGate Fellowship. And I'm sure the company also has a Facebook page that you could go to. But this spring, the things that harass honeybees in spring, other than other honeybees that are looking to rob things out, bumblebees. The bumblebees are so bold and they're so much bigger. It's like they don't even take the honeybees serious. Like they land on the landing board, they scout everything out. And the guard bees are attacking them. But I found that the hives I have out that have the HiveGate, and this is the part that sticks out of the entrance, the bumblebees land, they scoot past it, and they take off. They don't even investigate it, but they go to another beehive that has a normal entrance reducer with a normal height and everything, and then the bumblebees spend a lot of time actually trying to get in there to rob them of their stuff. We know that bumblebees are not like the wasps. Bumblebees are not meat eaters. So what are they after? They're after that sweet nectar that's coming in right now. And we do have a good nectar flow right now coming if the weather would cooperate. Apple trees are in bloom right now, so actually it's very good. But what I wanted to do is give an update on this, that people are saying it's working really well and it's taking the pressure off their hives, and some people were discussing whether or not they should put a screw through here so it pivots and so on. I don't. But there's a hole there that looks like it should have a screw, but I like to be able to just pull this out. Some people, their colonies are already building up so fast, so the metal gate, for those of you who get that comes with it, this is the entrance reducer, and this allows you to pivot this. So on the flip side of that, when this gets really congested and there's a whole pile of bees coming in and out, then you put two of them side by side. I have it down here, but it's locked into a display. But anyway, you get the picture. Two of them side by side, twice the traffic. Very easy for the bees to guard, and it's looking very promising so far. This is just citizen observation, feedback, fellowship. We're not getting into the strict science of a serious study. This is my citizen science feedback thing that I decided would be fun to do. And for those who get these, we have the forum on Facebook for people to talk about how they're using it, where and how. And if you spray this stuff, by the way, with Swarm Commander, the lure for your traps, because I do have a couple of these in my swarm traps, it does discolor the plastic. Swarm Commander, also I noticed, because I sprayed a little bit inside one of the hives, in the back of the hive, just enough to be enticing to scout bees that are looking for a place to live when they swarm. The markings that I had drawn on there with Sharpies, the Swarm Commander spray dissolved that into just a steady gray. There's something in that stuff that's pretty strong. So be careful with that, which is probably why it smells for so long after you put it in there. And of course, subsequently, why it works. So anyway, follow a link to that if you want to see it. Bumblebees can't get into it, and robber bees are not doing it. So the warm up, and keep in mind this year, so many people have lost their bees. A lot of people are very depressed about it. Some people have no bees to work with. I get it. You know, it's a tough thing. So then what do? Everybody's looking for bees. Also, other people have had difficult weather. A lot of the bee breeders can't deliver right now, as we saw with some of the Weaver situation there in Texas. So who's looking for bees this year? A lot of people. So swarms are going to be in demand. And I have a friend that said that he just saw swarm traps show up on the perimeter of his property. Never seen them before. They're all brand new. And I said, well, how high are they? Well, they're about 11 feet high. Ooh, what direction do they face? Oh, well, they're facing to the east to an open field near a golf course. Oh, really? Sounds like these people actually know what they're doing. So they're putting out boxes. Everybody is trying to recover their losses from last winter. So what's going to be in demand right now? Swarms. If you can't get them from breeders and you can't get your packages shipped, or they're If they're backlogged or something, then swarms are going to be the next level, swarms and splits. People are going to be splitting to recover their own losses. So unless somebody has a real successful year, the competition for swarms is going to be high. What should you do to make sure that you can get some of those swarms? Get the word out. If you have Facebook, social media, tell them, I'm a beekeeper. Hey, if you ever see something like this, and post a picture of a bunch of bees clumped on a tree branch or something, right at eye level, right at coffee drinking level, so you don't have to climb a ladder or anything. You see that, you call me right away. I'll come and get that. Those bees, I'll save them for you. And there are other people that are charging people to go and collect a swarm of bees on a tree branch. $200, I'll come and get that. What? You should be paying them almost. And in some areas, I heard that's what other people are doing. People that want to be sure to get the call for the swarms, they're paying like $20. You call me and it's a swarm of bees and I'm the first one there, I'll give you $20 for those. So that's some smart marketing too. So what I'm saying is there's competition for the swarms. So either you need to have a lot of social media connections. What's the next layer that you can do? Contact your beekeeping group full of people that want swarms. But most beekeeping associations have a swarm collection list. So when they get a call, they can go right down the list, whoever's available. Because keep in mind, when the swarm call comes in, it might be in an area, a child's playground or something. They want them out of there like yesterday. So the first person to respond gets it. So they should have a shotgun system. But also to where people say, got it, covered it, rolling, whatever. That way it saves other people from showing up just to see some other beekeeper collect it and leave. So the other thing is 911 centers. Don't call 911. Call their non-emergency number. Let them know you're a beekeeper. You're willing to respond to swarm calls. Fire department, same thing. Emergency medical services, EMS, let them know you're a beekeeper. You're willing to go and collect them and how far away you're willing to go. So give them that umbrella. And then you better have your stuff packed and ready to go because there's a reputation that goes with that too. If they had a good experience, they made the call and you were there in 15 minutes because you've got a load and go kit. You got your Hive Butler sitting there with the screen top ready to go, a couple of frames in it. Why do you put the frames in your Hive Butler? It's so much easier than transporting an actual bee box. The Hive Butlers, if you don't already know, are those plastic totes. They come with a plastic screen option that has screens in it. So the screen top version is the one. And then what I do is put 3 frames of better comb in there, but you could put 3 frames of any drawn comb. What happens is you dump your swarm in there, they collect onto those frames because the interior surface of the Hive Butler is too smooth and the bees can't cling to it very well. They can cling to the cover a little bit, and some do, some will, but the majority of them will be on your frames of drawn comb, which is perfect because then when you get back to your apiary and you go to the hive that you want to put your swarm in, you can pull the frames out and set those in first, and then whatever bees are left, because the smooth interior surface is a little shaken, they go out 100% of them right in there. It is like the easiest way to transport a swarm of bees. I'm not going to take a beehive with me anymore to go and collect a swarm because it is just too easy to do it with the Hive Butler setup. And don't forget to use FRED10 for a discount code if you go and get a Hive Butler if you don't have them already. I don't know how long that code's going to be good. I know it's good right now. What else? That's it. So thanks for watching today. Thank you for being here and spending your valuable time. If you have questions, put them down in the comment section below or go to my website, thewaytobee.org, and go to the page, the Way to Bee page, and there's a little form that you can fill out and ask your question too. Join us on Facebook. Support your local beekeepers. Don't forget about Hives for Heroes if you're looking to help people, help veterans acclimate to civilian life again. And you want to send a beehive or provide training or mentoring or anything like that, it's a national program. They'd be happy to have you. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. It's going to warm up tomorrow and Sunday. Those are solid beekeeping days. Good luck with your bees.